Hi Woolly Thistlers, it's Rachel from Barkland Croft here in Fair Isle, and as you can probably see I'm in a different location today. This week I'm covering the school lunches for the primary school, so I'm just in the kitchen making today's lunch, which is pasta and lamb ragu with a side salad and ginger slice for pudding. I thought I'd start off by answering a couple of questions that I've received. And the first one was from Mabel. And it was Mabel who very kindly visited Selfridges last year and took some photos of my design for the barber competition whilst it was on display. So I'll pop these in here and you can have a look. And Mabel's question was to do with the pattern that I used on the lining of the jacket. So it's no particular pattern, it doesn't have a name or anything like that. It was just one that I didn't design the individual motifs myself, but it was my decision how I put them together. The way I started off designing something like that was I had an idea in my head of how I wanted the overall pattern to look, whether I wanted very big sort of deep motifs or smaller ones or what kind of combination. So I went for, let's have a look, 9-row, 3-row and 5-row patterns, and made a combination of those. The first thing I do is, I'm very old school, I don't use a computer for designing things, so I tend to kind of draw out different combinations of motifs just to see how they look together, whether they work or not, and then I might start colouring in just to give me an idea of what patterns will work. When I'm happy with the combination of the patterns, I tend to either do a swatch or make myself something useful so that I'm knitting for a purpose, as it were. So this is actually the same pattern that is used in the lining of the jacket. I just made myself a pair of leg warmers, which are always useful here because it's cold. Just did them in 2 colours so I could see whether this worked as an overall pattern or not. Then, let's find it. I tried out different colourways, putting the patterns together in different ways. I knew I wanted to use what we'd call here the traditional colours, so red, Shetland black, which is a dark brown, natural white, yellow and blue, but obviously within those colours there are so many different shades, so it was a case of trying out, seeing what worked, what didn't work, and this was the end result. The way I come up with the overall pattern, the motifs that I use, I didn't design those motifs myself. They were just ones that I liked the look at, that I found visually appealing to me. A lot of times people will ask, how do you get the patterns? Where do you get them from? Well, over the years I have a book, I don't even see, it sort of has squared, it's maybe not very obvious, squared paper or dotted pages, and I just kind of, whether it might be in the museum or in books, I kind of keep a record of different patterns, maybe ones that are used here on the Isle, so I have a resource that I can look back at, and if I'm thinking, okay, I need to do something with 5-row patterns, well, I've got all my 5-row patterns there. Otherwise you can find lots of books either at libraries or thrift stores, charity shops, or places like eBay. This is a really good one, Fair Isle Knitting by Sarah Don. Some of the photos are actually here in Fair Isle. And this has lots of actual knitting patterns, but it also has charts as well. Another older one is this one by Sheila McGregor called The Complete Book of Traditional Fair Isle Knitting. And again, this has lots of charts in it. A more recent one is 200 Fair Isle Designs by Mary Jane Muckleston. And this is really good. The way it's organised is the sort of size of the pattern. So if you're looking for a particular size or number of rows, you can sort of find lots of options in here. And Mary Jane gives sort of different colourways as well. And then this is another excellent one. This is produced by the Shetland Guild of Spinners, Weavers, Knitters and Dyers, and it's called A Shetlander's Fair Isle Graph Book. And you can find that through the Shetland Times bookshop online. And this is just such a wonderful, try and show it, resource of the actual motifs, different colourways as well. It's a really lovely one just to sit and look through actually and get some inspiration. So that's kind of where I get my ideas from if I'm not working to a particular colourway in my head that's inspired by something, say, I don't know, the colour of the sea or the plants, that kind of thing. Plenty of ways to find different patterns, and then it's just down to the individual to kind of put them together in a way that you find pleasing to your own eye. So I hope that answers the question about the pattern there, Mabel. My next question is about the mud and the impact it has on the sheep's feet. And this is an excellent question because this winter has just been horrendous, as you've seen from pretty much every video I've been posting, saying about how bad the mud is. It's been awful this winter. It really, really has. And yes, it does cause problems for the sheep's feet, or rather it can cause problems for the sheep's feet. A lot of what I find in the Yow's field, they've probably got the best fields, but because it's still so damp in there, they do kind of around their fetlock area, so just kind of above their hoof, around sort of their ankle or sort of wrist, depending which leg it is. They sometimes do lose a lot of their hair on their legs, so they end up with little bald bits around the tops of their hooves, which doesn't really cause any problems as such. The hair does grow back once the weather improves. The main problem at the moment I'm finding, and this is the same every year, is that once the ground starts to dry out, the sheep have cloven hooves. Their hooves are kind of two parts with a split in the middle. And what happens is they're walking on the wet mud, and the wet mud gets in between the two bits of their hooves. And that's not a problem in itself necessarily. It's just what happens, the way they walk and the ground they're walking on. But once the mud starts to dry out, both on the ground and in between their hooves, it becomes very, very hard, and that can really irritate and cause quite a lot of pain in between their hooves. So that's one thing that I'm sort of constantly checking for, is any limping sheep. I'm lucky that most of my sheep are friendly enough that they'll allow me to go up to them and I can lift a leg up, have a look at their hoof, and probably in about 8 out of 10 cases sort it quite easily by pulling out the dried mud from there. And if it's looking really red, give them a spray with we call it blue spray, very very original name. It's terramycin, which is an antibiotic spray, and that will just kill off any infection before it starts. So at the moment, that's the main problem with the feet. It's just limping because the mud is drying out in between their hooves. They can also get a disease called foot rot, which is as nasty as it sounds. The bacteria that causes that is present in the ground all of the time, in the soil year round. You can't get rid of it. One thing you can do to minimise the chances of the sheep picking up foot rot is to vaccinate them with something called foot vax, and that just stops the disease really affecting them badly. If you do find any that have foot rot, and again, it's kind of the bacteria start sort of eating away at their feet. Blue spray and an injection with something like Alamycin, which is a antibiotic, and that tends to clear it up really quickly in a matter of days, thankfully. Another question I had was, is the sheep business viable? It depends really what you mean by the sheep business. What I'm doing here at Barkland, I'm trying to make it a viable business by diversifying into producing wool from the fleeces of my sheep to bring in added income. Mainly the way things are done here on the Isle is that people breed bigger crosses of sheep, so Shetland Yows crossed with either a Thistle ram or a Suffolk ram or a Cheviot ram, which produces big, fast-growing lambs that will then get more money when they go out to the marts to be sold. Typically, with the numbers that people have on their crofts here, crofts are very small parcels of land. I have 25 acres, which is probably a bit more than average for a croft, but roughly average for Fair Isle. Just the money you make from your sheep, no, that isn't a viable business. I mean, to give you an example, this winter, just getting through the winter, so 6 months, it's cost me more in feed, silage, haylage for the sheep than I earned last year. So it's a very unviable business if you look at it in those terms. I'm blanking now, but I think the number of crofts on the Isle is 18. If I'm wrong, I'll check and I'll put a note there. There is a family on the Isle that has taken on a lot of crofts that were run by people who are now retired. So I think in total they run more than half the number of crofts that there are on the Isle. So for them, working with really large numbers of sheep, that does make it more viable. If you go somewhere, there are a few examples in Shetland, but certainly into Scotland, you're looking at bigger sheep farms where they're running hundreds and hundreds of sheep, and that would be their sole income, and that would be a viable business. But here, you can't rely on earning a living just through the sheep. You have to have other jobs, supplementary income as well. I thought I'd give you a quick update on my Patreon that I've started. You guys really are the best. I know I keep saying thank you in all my videos I do, and it doesn't come near, come close to explaining how grateful I am to you all for your kind and generous support. It really has kept me and the sheep going this last sort of month or so, and to say I'm overwhelmed by the response is the understatement of the century. We appreciate it more than we can say, the sheep and I. I should just say about the Patreon, if you sign up for the Patreon, which is a monthly subscription, and for which you'll get benefits in return, such as extra videos, a postcard from Fair Isle, that kind of thing, you do not have to commit for a certain length of time. You can sign up for 1 month. If you decide, or actually it's not quite what I want, you can cancel at any time. If you want to go up to the next tier or come down a tier or two, that's absolutely fine too. You're not locked in for any period of time aside from the month that you've just been charged for. So please don't feel that it's a long-term commitment. As a lot of people find, financial circumstances change so quickly, or can change so quickly, and whereas you might sign up for it and 2 months down the line circumstances change, please, you can cancel at any time. I'd hate for anyone to feel that they were locked into something that they couldn't afford, so please just bear that in mind, that you're really not tied in to a fixed period of time for it. The final thing I'd just like to ask on here, and I hope this is okay to do it in this forum, is I'm really trying to get hold of Zoe Kinney. I've tried emailing you a couple of times, but each time it bounces back to me saying that the email address you provided is invalid. I'm hoping that you might be watching this. If you are, please could you drop me an email or a message, whatever's easiest, and let me know your email address, and then I can get it sent to you. Thank you. We started the month with more snow, and had a couple of incredibly clear days and nights. We've also had fog, some torrential rain, more snow, and a day of sunbathing weather for the sheep. The rams and the boys have been moved back up to their top park. And last year's lambs have been moved across the road into the big field.
Empty bucket, Sarah.
Curly Wurly volunteered to take care of them, mainly because he knew it meant he gets more biscuits. And I kept them in this field for 24 hours just to get them used to it and being away from their mums. And then they were let go in with the owls. Branston got to meet his great-grandmother Patchwork, and Jason got to meet his grandmother Miss Marple. Towards the end of the month, we had an incredible display of the aurora, or Mirry dancers, but as usual, my phone didn't really do it justice. So it's goodbye for another month from me and the sheep as we shelter from the wind, and we're really looking forward to seeing you again in our next video. Bye bye!